So hi everybody, my name is Mura and I'm the Health Promotion Officer at the Sexual Health Centre, and I am facilitating this Shift webinar series with you guys today. I'm also just going to recap. I know I keep doing it in every webinar, but it's just in addition to the services that we provide, our Sexual Health Hub Instagram page. So again, like I've said before, this page basically covers everything that we'll be covering in the webinar series. So if there's any of the information that you're not sure that maybe you remember, or you're just curious about some things, all of that knowledge and information is on the page. Condom demos, talk about sexting, pornography, relationships, all kinds of things like that. And there is also a shift expert, which is basically a person who's a professional to answer any questions that you want to submit anonymously to that page. So it's a great way to ask questions and have them answered and signposted. So do give it a follow on Instagram if you can, or you can just pop over and ask some questions or direct people there if there's ever any questions that you have. So today's webinar, we are going to be covering everything from sexuality, all of the myths that exist around sex and relationships, and then moving into the different types of consent that are out there to protect yourself in regards to safer sex. So that's the plan for today. So we'll start with sexuality. We'll talk about the different types of sexual activities that exist, so be it by yourself or with a partner. We'll go through the different forms of contraception, so hormonal forms and barrier forms, because there is a difference in what they do. We'll also look then at kind of some myth busters. So I'll throw out some questions, we'll see if people know the answers, and we'll talk you through whether they're true or false, some common things that often come up that people aren't sure of. And then finally, we'll just look at some of the support services out there that can help around accessing contraception or accessing support around sexuality or relationships. And then as usual, Q&A at the end or during. As I said, if the question pops into your head, feel free to ask it during. There's no problem while it's fresh, just type it into the chat box and we'll make sure to answer it. So that is the plan for today's webinar. I'm just going to ask as well at this point, I know there's still some people coming in, if anybody is there and if there's a couple of people logged in or watching on the same account as usual, if you wouldn't mind popping the number of people watching into the chat box for us, just so we can tot up the numbers so we have an accurate idea of who's here and make sure that everybody gets their shift booklets then at the end that we'll be posting out to you. So if everyone just types in 3, 6, 2, 1, whatever it is into the chat box, that would be great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Now, so we're going to kick off today with a look at sexuality. So sexuality is intertwined in all different aspects of our life, I suppose. So sexuality encompasses intimacy, so being close to somebody, a sense of togetherness, familiarity, that affection that you have with somebody when you're in a relationship or you have some kind of a shared understanding with them, and companionship, so just that company. It's also then intertwined with kind of sensuality, so pleasure, passion, desire, your body, the kind of more intimate acts around it. And all of that intertwines again with our identity. So be it LGBTQIA, be it your sex, your gender, how you express that, and the types of people that you're intimate with. So when we talk about sexuality, we're actually talking about a whole range of issues and topics. And so it's just really important that we're aware of that, that when somebody is asked about their sexuality, it's much more than just I'm straight, I'm gay, I'm bi. It's all of that and how you like to act on that and how close you are with somebody else. So when we understand that, we understand how important it is to us as people and how much it actually feeds into our life, into our happiness, and into our greater relationships that we have with people, because it's a very close and intimate thing to be sexual with somebody else. When we think then of sexual identities, they're actually really broad. So this little diagram that we have on the left, I know a lot of people might have seen this before, but it's a really useful one just to get an idea of what actual sexual identity is, how it's different from our gender, how it's different from how we express that. So if we look at some of them, our sexual orientation, if you look at it here, is the heart on our little gingerbread person, is who you want to have sex with. So who you're attracted to, who's the person that you want to, engage in those intimate acts with. Our sexual identities then is whether somebody is gay, whether they're lesbian, bi, maybe you're asexual, which means you're not attracted to somebody, pansexual, aromantic, queer. So there's a whole range of sexual identities. Gender identity then is different to our sexual identity. So gender identity is who somebody identifies with. So it's whether you're male, female, maybe other. And I always think a good way to remember gender is if you are ever going anywhere, you're filling out a form or there's something there, people will ask, what's your name, what's your address, what's your phone number, what's your gender, are you male, female, other? They might have some selection boxes, of different types of gender identities that you can fill in. You're never going to come across a form that says, what's your name, what's your address, what's your phone number, what gender are you, and who do you like to have sex with? It just, it would never happen. So it's a really easy way to remember our sexual identity is different to our gender. So our gender is what gender we identify with, and our sexual identity then is who we're attracted to. Our biological sex then refers to who or what type of chromosomes we have, and it's generally the sex organs that people have. So generally XX is for male, and it's generally somebody with a penis and testicles, and XY is usually for females, and you'd have somebody with ovaries. So biological sex is often different to somebody's sexual identity, and it could be different again. So somebody might identify to a different gender than they were biologically born with. So all of that is just encompassed in our little gingerbread person here. So we have identity is who you think and feel you're attracted to, your orientation again, attracted to, your sex is your biological sex, and the expression then is everything around it. So our identities can change, and it's important that we understand that around gender identity. That leads us into, I suppose, I just want to give everybody an overview of the different types of sexualities that exist out there, because this can be often confusing for people, and they don't know what to do with it, and some people are afraid to ask and they're not sure. So it's just a really easy way to get an overview of the different types of sexualities so you understand what they are. I don't know if people know either, but all of these flags that are on the page are actually the different flags that represent these different types of sexual identities. So heterosexual flag is actually a grayscale flag that we have here on the left, and it's for straight people or people who are attracted to people of the opposite sex. So you'd be heterosexual if you're a male attracted to a female or a female attracted to a male. An asexual then is people who don't experience sexual attraction. So it's not the same as deciding that you don't want to have sex with somebody or that it's not your type. An asexual is somebody who actually just doesn't feel any sexual attraction to anybody of any gender or any sex. So it's a very particular type. Homosexual then would encompass gay or lesbian, and that's used to just describe, I suppose, people who have a sex attraction to the same sex as themselves. So lesbian would be if you have a woman who's attracted to another woman, and gay would be men who are attracted to other men. Bisexual then, which is our one here beneath it, is when people are attracted to both men and women. So some people mightn't have a preference. So they might find that they are equally as attracted to men as they are to women. So they might be in a relationship with a woman, firstly, and then their next relationship might be with a man, and there could be no difference for them in terms of how they're attracted to or how they feel in those relationships. So they would be considered bisexual. Pansexual then is people who are attracted to people regardless of their biological sex, gender identity, or sexuality. So a pansexual is attracted to everybody. So they don't distinguish based on somebody's biological sex. So it's not just male or female. You could be attracted to male, female, trans, people who are bisexual, people who are heterosexual, people who are genderqueer. They're really open to everybody, and it's more about the person for them that they're attracted to than necessarily the sex or the gender. Queer then is an interesting one. So this is the last one that I've put in here. There are others, but these are just main ones. So I think they're the easiest and kind of the most important in one way to know about as a starting point to step in here. Queer is an umbrella term. So what that means is basically you might hear the term queer put out as just a general term for somebody who isn't heterosexual. So they might just say I'm queer, but not specify what type of other attractions they have. The word has a mixed feeling for people. So it's just important to be aware of that as well. Some people feel that they've reclaimed it and they're very happy to use it and take it back. But it was often used in a derogatory or in a bad fashion. And, people would use it as a slur. So they'd use it negatively towards somebody. And therefore, some people still don't like the word and they don't want it used towards them, and they'll choose not to use it for themselves. So knowing what it is important, but also it's up to somebody whether they're comfortable with that term. If you ever do come across it or you hear somebody using it, don't necessarily label somebody with it unless they're comfortable with that themselves. So there are all of our different types of sexualities that we're going to look at today. I just wanted to touch on as well around this. So when we're talking about relationships and we're talking about sexualities, it's really important that we do just acknowledge there are different stages that some people will go through, particularly the LGBTQIA plus community, in terms of coming out and being maybe able to openly engage in those relationships comfortably in the world that we live in, unfortunately. So I just wanted to highlight that today and look at some of the ages and stages of coming out for somebody who might be LGBTQIA. So this is a report from LGBT Ireland from 2016, and it just had some really interesting facts and kind of, I suppose, stats that I think would be important for people to know. One of them is that 12 years old is the most common age that people discovered their LGBTI plus identity. So when people were around 12 years, they were able to identify for themselves that they felt maybe they were attracted to other men, maybe they were attracted to other women, but that they weren't necessarily heterosexual. So that tells us that people kind of know these things quite early on when it comes to, maybe development and puberty, like we talked at, would usually be happening around these ages. So that tied in with somebody's sexual development and their identity coming together. 16 years old then was the most common age people told somebody that they were LGBT plus. So usually, although people might know around 12, it actually took them till they were about 16 to feel comfortable to tell somebody or maybe sure that they were okay with putting that out there. So that was 4 years that somebody kind of sat with that and needed to be sure, maybe wasn't sure or wasn't sure who to tell. 1 in 4 people who had come out had not told their mother or father they were LGBTI. So that's an interesting statistic as well. So if we think about that 1 in 4 people maybe were more comfortable telling a friend or a peer or somebody who they thought was more open than their family. So that's something that people then have to hold, I suppose, and struggle with, and often lead double lives between who and how they are at home versus who they are with maybe friends. And the gap between knowing and telling decreased with age. So what that basically means is it was lowest for LGBTI teens, but 1 to 2 years is a significant length of time at a critical time in their development. So the older somebody got and they thought that maybe they were a different sexual identity, they were much more likely to tell somebody, but the younger somebody found out, they were less likely to tell anybody. So chances are there are people on this webinar, there's people that you know who maybe think that they might fall into that community of LGBTI. They mightn't have told anybody and they mightn't be comfortable or sure yet who or how they would like to do that. But it's just really important to know that chances are there is always somebody nearby who might be struggling with this or not sure, and that there is support and information out there around them, and that they fit exactly into sexual health and education as everybody else because it's relevant to everybody, no matter your sexual identity. And 3% had not come out to anybody, and those were more likely to be younger people, bisexual people, or intersex people. So there are people who haven't come out to anybody at all. And it's just important that we know that, and we make sure that people know, if they ever choose to, that there are supports and places that they can go to do that. And one of those that I just want to touch on today for anybody is actually with us in the Sexual Health Centre. So we have an LGBTI plus sexual health support service, which is Conrad, who is dedicated. His work is purely in this area. And you can make an appointment to come see Conrad just for a chat, to figure out, maybe some of the things that somebody's thinking. If they're not sure, it might be a parent or a friend looking for some support on how to support somebody that they know who they think is struggling. And Conrad is really lovely, friendly, and open. So I just wanted to highlight that for everybody today, that there is a coming out support. There is just a general private support chat. There is a friend chat. There is a parent chat. There is all kinds of, capacity building for professionals. So there might be some teachers or, youth reach people. And if there's anything like that that you need or you're not sure of, Conrad is a great link and support around that. So that leads us nicely then into sexual activities. So we understand all of the different types of sexualities that are out there, and that everybody is engaging in sex at some point, most likely in their lives. So what we really need to do now is look at what type of sex people have, how they go about it, and how they can be safe doing it. So when we think of sexual activities, by yourself is often one that people overlook, but it's actually really important. And it's something that most people are going to engage with. And we're often, I think, a little embarrassed to talk about it or mention it because it's a private thing, but also, it's not really spoken about. So how are we going to do it? But masturbation is totally normal, natural, healthy, and safe thing to do. And masturbation refers to stimulating your own genitals, usually with hands or a sex toy, and it's how you get to know your body. It's how somebody gets to know what they like, what they're comfortable with, maybe how they like to be touched, what turns them on. And it's a natural relaxant. It's a stress reliever. So people often masturbate when they're stressed or, worried about something, and it can naturally actually help with all of those things. So not only is it a good way to get to know yourself, it's also a good way to be able to help yourself and please yourself, be it when you're in a relationship, but also maybe in between. It's a great way that you don't not have to have this and just wait for somebody else to provide it. There are just a couple of, I suppose, I would say fun facts, but just practical points that we can know for people. One of them is wash your hands. So just being hygienic. We have this all around now with COVID. So I think people are really good with hygiene, but just to note it as well. So it's really important just to wash your hands before touching your penis, your vulva, your vagina, your anus. It's just making sure there aren't any bacteria and you're not introducing anything to yourself that you don't want to. Using a lubricant. So often people don't think about this when they're actually pleasuring themselves, but using a lubricant can be a great way to lower friction and can help make things more comfortable. Cleaning sex toys as well. So if people do choose to, masturbate, often they might include toys, vibrators, things like that, just to make it more pleasurable for themselves. And if anybody is doing this, it's just really important that they keep them clean. So wipe them down maybe before use, wipe them down again afterwards, and try not to share sex toys with anybody else. This is often a way that, bacteria is spread, and often STIs can be contracted from sex toys that way if they're unclean. So just something to keep in mind. Masturbation, totally normal and healthy. Shouldn't be embarrassed about engaging in it. And if you do, just be clean and be safe and have fun. That leads us then on to the different types of sexual activities that people engage in with others. So the first one is oral sex. So oral sex is using the mouth or tongue to arouse the genitals of a sexual partner. And oral sex can be given, so you could be the person actually using your tongue on somebody else, or received, somebody might be using their tongue on you. And it happens for everybody, all genders, all sexualities. It's important, I suppose, just not to give oral sex if you have cold sores. So be that everything from, that kind of tingly feeling that people often get before the cold sore comes up. You can actually be infectious from that point to having the cold sore. So wait till it's totally gone. We have had occasions where people have come to us and they've actually contracted genital herpes, which is like getting cold sores, but on your genital area, because they've engaged in oral sex while they had a cold sore. So just really important to know that. Flavored condoms also are a great way to be safe if you're engaging in oral sex as well, so they can stop the transmission of STIs. So if, for example, somebody had an STI and you gave them oral sex, that person can actually get an STI in their mouth or in their throat. So we're going to talk about all of that in more detail next week when we talk about STIs, but just really important that if you are giving oral sex to somebody and you're not sure about their STI status, using flavored condoms, that's what they're designed for. They come in all different flavors. I was somewhere recently and they were telling me that they could get chicken tikka flavored condoms. So like there is something for everybody. There's no excuse not to use them, and just know that they're out there and that's what they're for. The next one then that we're going to look at is vaginal sex. So vaginal sex involves the penetration of the person's vagina with another person's finger, penis, or a sex toy. So it's really important, again, if somebody is engaging in vaginal sex, condoms, regular condoms are the most effective way to prevent the transmission of STIs for regular vaginal sex. Anal sex, finally, involves the penetration of a person's anus, usually with another person's penis, sex toy, or fingers again. If you're having anal sex, it's important to use good quality condoms and lubricants. So the anus obviously isn't necessarily immediately designed to be engaging in sex. So often it can rip or tear much more easily than, say, a vagina or somebody's mouth. So it is high risk sex, anal sex. So it's really important if somebody is engaging in it that they're safe. So lubricant, because there is no natural lubricants in the anus, and condoms prevent any transmission of fluids, any transmission of blood if there was a rip or tear, and you're preventing STIs. So it's really important for anal sex to be safe and never to feel pressurized into doing things you're not happy about. And I've put this in here because we've noticed in the past few years with, I suppose, pornography being so accessible, and, you know, men and women, everybody can access porn on their phone, they're watching it more often. And there's been a huge rise in anal sex. You know, people talk about it all the time, like it's, you know, an act that everybody should engage in, and that it's really, I suppose, popular, for lack of a better word. But it's really important that people understand that there is a difference between anal sex for men and for women. So anal sex is more pleasurable for men because of their prostate gland. Women don't have anything up their anus to stimulate, so it's not necessarily as pleasurable. If people choose to engage in anal sex, it's because they want to, but you should never be pressurized or feel that you should be engaging in anal sex. It isn't for everybody, it's a personal choice. And just because you see it in porn, it's not reality. And do not feel that you have to do something if it's uncomfortable, sore, or you don't want to. So we are going to go through now a couple of, I suppose, random cards and questions that we would usually use in the workshops, that are the questions, I suppose, I get asked most often on the areas that people really aren't sure about. They often think they know the answers, but there's always a hesitation or a little bit of, there's always someone or something who has said, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Actually, I'm not really sure. I think I know the answer, but I don't. So one of them, which I imagine is becoming more common that people know the answer to, is it possible to get pregnant the first time somebody has sex? So I'm just going to ask, and I think I've already hit it actually, my apologies, you to pop the answers to these into the chat box if you don't mind, if anyone's comfortable doing that, and we'll just see some of the answers that people have. But this one, just to continue now that I've hit that, is yes, absolutely it's possible to get pregnant the first time somebody has sex. And sometimes I think there was at least a rumor going around that you almost got a free pass, or the first time was a time that people, you know, couldn't possibly get pregnant because you've never had sex before, so it couldn't happen. The minute your body hits puberty, it means that it's ready technically to get pregnant. So it's our body's preparing. Now, we know, I suppose, most of the time at 12 or 13, just because maybe a girl got her period doesn't mean she's ready, you know, to get pregnant, but it can physically happen. So it's really important to know that no matter what age somebody has sex, be it 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, you have a chance of getting pregnant. So it's really important that there is no free passes, that if you decide to have sex, that it's at an appropriate age. So we know our age of consent in Ireland is 17, and that you're using protection to prevent against unwanted pregnancies. Our next question: how long does sperm survive in the body after ejaculation? Does anybody know the answer to this? If you think you do, or if you want to just take a guess, just throw it into the chat box. I'm just always curious to see what people think or might think about these. 3 to 5 days, 5 to 7 days. Yeah, you're in and around, absolutely. So what we know is that sperm can live in the body for 5 days after ejaculation. So if we think about it in terms of, do you remember we looked at the menstrual cycle and people planning around when might be a safer time to have sex? Technically, if somebody had sex right before their partner was due to ovulate, that sperm could survive in the bodies for 5 days. So they might have been fine at the point they had sex, but 3 days later they might ovulate and that sperm is still alive inside the body, so they have a chance of getting pregnant. So it's just really important that people know that that's actually the time frame that sperm can survive. Our next one then: is withdrawing the penis before ejaculation a safe way to avoid pregnancy? No. Loads of no's coming in. Yeah, you're dead right. So it's not a safe way to avoid pregnancy. And the reason being is there is semen in pre-cum. So the minute a man gets an erection, a man only has one tube inside his penis, and they use that to urinate out of and to ejaculate out of. And that means that before they're ever going to ejaculate, their body naturally sends up almost like a cleaning fluid through the tube to make sure that it's ready for the ejaculate. And inside that, you'll often see it on the top of the penis, kind of like a sticky white fluid the minute they get an erection. There are thousands of sperm. So before a man ever ejaculates, there is semen on the tip of his penis. And if he puts his penis into a woman, he can get her pregnant. So it's really simple. This pull-out method idea has been around for ages, and it's a complete myth that it's a safe way to avoid pregnancy. So before somebody ever ejaculates or comes inside their partner, there is semen on the tip of their penis and they have a chance to get somebody pregnant. So again, condoms are the best and safest way to avoid unwanted pregnancies. The next one then, is Vaseline or baby oil okay to use as a lubricant with latex condoms? We have some no's. No. Yeah, again, you're dead right. So no, it's absolutely not okay to use. And the reason is that Vaseline and baby oil are oil-based, same as things like sun cream. You know, if you ever go on holidays, there's usually oil in the sun creams that you use. And if you touch a latex condom with anything that has oil in it, it starts to break it down. So latex condoms are essentially allergic to oil-based substances, and they'll start to rot or tear. So if you put Vaseline on the outside of a condom, you could be in the middle of having sex with somebody and it'll break it down enough that it will rip or tear. And you have a chance, if you're a female, you might be exposed to an unwanted pregnancy, but you're also at risk of an STI. So it's really important that if you're using latex condoms, that you only use water-based lubricants with them. So just keep that in mind. You'll usually see it. If you get condoms from us at the Sexual Health Centre, we always give out the lube with them so that people have the right one. But if you are ever buying condoms, make sure that you're buying the right lube and you'll see the water-based written on the bottles. Next one then, can a girl get pregnant if she has sex during her period? What do people think? Maybe yes. Yes, yes. Yeah. Lads, you're brilliant. You're very well up on this. So you're absolutely right. So yes, a girl can get pregnant if she has sex during her period. And the reason is, as we just spoke about, so sperm lives in the body for 5 days. So the sperm is there. But also, if we think about a woman's menstrual cycle, so we have our little diagram here. Once a month, a woman releases an egg from an ovary and it sits up here in the fallopian tube waiting for the sperm so that she can get pregnant. But has anybody seen identical twins? Like everybody always knows somebody or knows of an identical twin. And what happens when you have identical twins is that for some reason, that egg, for some reason, that egg split into two when it met the sperm and it made an exact copy of itself. So you get two people who look exactly the same. So you might have two brothers with blonde hair, blue eyes, and they're almost identical. It's hard to tell them apart. But what happens when you have non-identical twins? So what actually happens is for some reason that month, that woman released an egg, it got fertilized by the sperm, but she also released another egg. So we call that a rogue egg. So for some random reason, nobody knows why, her body released 2 eggs that month. And that can happen almost straight away. So it might be that she released an egg and then released another egg exactly at the same time. Or she might have released an egg and gotten pregnant and 3 days later released another egg. And we know that that sperm is still alive inside her body. So she got pregnant. So one might be slightly sooner than another. So it's really important that people realize then, if somebody is having sex during their period, they could still release a rogue egg. So there's always a chance of an egg being released. We don't feel it as women. So women aren't sitting there and like, oh, that was it, I just ovulated. Women have no idea when they release an egg. They can't feel it. So it could happen anytime during the month. So while we have the menstrual cycle and we can kind of track when there is a rough schedule of things due to occur, there is never a guarantee that we're on that schedule or that we don't release a rogue egg. And that includes during somebody's period. I also just want to say as well, I know some people when they think about period sex are like, oh my God, gross. It's really personal choice. So if somebody chooses to have sex during their period, it's because they enjoy it and they want to do it. And it's not for any of us to judge. So if somebody chooses to have sex in their period, it's perfectly within their right. They might like that and that's their choice. So any type of sex that somebody chooses to engage in is okay as long as they are happy and willing to engage in that sex. So our next one, can anal sex prevent pregnancy? What do you think? We have a slowdown on the chat box. People maybe not sure. Yes, no. So the answer is no. And the reason being that live sperm can technically leak from the anal passage and enter the vagina if vaginal fluid is present. So when people often think of anal sex, they think that because they might ejaculate into a different part of somebody's body, that there is a much less likelihood of them getting pregnant, so they can't possibly get pregnant. In theory, that's true. There isn't any organs up inside somebody's anus to get them pregnant. But what goes in must come out, I suppose, is the easiest way to put it. And if that leaks down and gets anywhere near the outside of somebody's vulva, there is usually lubricant, natural lubricant there. And sperm is like a torpedo fish. If it gets anywhere near that kind of fluid, it is just going to swim straight up into the vagina and up into somebody's fallopian tubes to get them pregnant. So our bodies are designed to reproduce. They want to do it with every single thing that's in them. So they're technically out to do that at every cost. And any chance that they get, chances are it's going to make the best attempt of it. So if somebody is engaging in anal sex, again, as we spoke about earlier, it's a really high risk form of sex. So it's really important that you use condoms. But if you're not for any reason, it's really important that you make sure that sperm does not get anywhere near the vagina, because you could still get somebody pregnant. So just keep that in mind. How many times can somebody take the emergency contraceptive pill? It used to be called the morning after pill. What do you think? Think there's a limit on it? Is it yearly, monthly? Maybe not too sure. So the answer to this one is, I'm just going to, yeah, we have monthly. Interesting, yeah. So as many times as required. So I suppose they changed the name of this from morning after pill to emergency contraceptive pill to get people out of this mindset that you could only take it the morning after you'd had a risk. So you actually have up to 5 days to take it. So there's two different types. So when somebody has a risk, so be it that a condom broke, or maybe you didn't use a condom with the type of sex that you were engaged with, and you think afterwards, oh my God, I actually maybe am at risk of pregnancy here, you can go to your pharmacy if you're 16 or older and request the emergency contraceptive pill. They will ask you a bunch of questions in the pharmacies. They'll usually take you into a side room. They're not asking you to judge you or to grill you. They're asking you because they need to gather it for data statistics so that they can say every year X amount of people access the emergency contraceptive pill. They also ask you what type of risk you had, so what type of sex it was that you engaged in, and they'll ask you when that sex was. And the reason they're doing this is because they need to be sure that they give you the best form of pill that they can. So there is a 3-day pill and there is a 5-day pill. So when they ask you those questions, don't be offended. It's literally just to make sure that they're getting you the right stuff that they can, and that they give you a stronger pill essentially if it's longer out from the time of your risk activity. It's really important to note that emergency contraception should not be used as a regular form of contraception. So if somebody is going out every weekend and having unprotected sex and going to access the emergency contraceptive pill, it's going to be really tough on their body. So it's a really high dose of hormones, and it is not recommended that you use it regularly. Thus, the name emergency contraceptive. So they're recommending that you only use it in an emergency when you need it. If you do need to access it, it's free with a medical card. So if anybody has a medical card, you can go to the pharmacy and get it. It's completely free. And the price varies then in different pharmacies. So often the likes of, the big brand stores like Boots or, that, people often think they'll go in there because it's more anonymous and it's easier to walk into a big store without people noticing you. They're usually more expensive. So they're usually around 50, 55 euros. Smaller pharmacies, usually you can access them for 20, 25. And if ever anyone is struggling or they don't think they can afford it, don't not get it because you can't afford it. Give us a call in the Sexual Health Centre. We'll be very happy to link you up or find you somewhere where you can either access it for what you can afford or hopefully for free. So always reach out and don't take it, because at the end of the day, a baby or an unwanted pregnancy can be much more costly than just figuring out how to access the emergency contraceptive pill in the moment. So never be alone with it. There's always supports there to help with it, but know you can take it as many times as you need to over your life. Don't depend on it, because there are much better forms of contraception, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it is free with a medical card and the price varies across pharmacies. So that brings us into our contraception section then of this webinar. So what we're going to look at is the different forms of contraception and the kind of barriers, I suppose, that we're noticing or being told about that young people are experiencing in trying to actually get their hands on different types of contraception. So there was a report done about exactly this, how young people are accessing contraception, and they looked at 16 to 25-year-olds, and they reported that they had a lot of difficulty in getting them in a lot of cases. And what they said were the problems were lack of local access. So depending on where they lived, obviously, if you live in a city, it can be much more easier, you know, to go to a pharmacy, or we're based in the city, for example. So there's loads of services there that you can access and people who can link you up and help with it. But for people living in more rural areas, or, you know, West Cork and different places, there might be one local pharmacy. That can then lead to our third point, which is embarrassment. Maybe your parents or, you know, family or guardians go there, or maybe it's just really small and you feel a bit awkward and you don't want to ask. There's the cost factor then. So how much do these things actually cost, which we'll talk about, and the inconvenience. So actually, if you're in the heat of a moment, you know, you mightn't have planned that you were thinking about having sex with somebody. You might meet somebody in a night out and find them really attractive and think you're going to have sex with them. But the inconvenience then of, if you don't have contraception, do you go looking for it, or does somebody take a chance and take a risk and think about having sex with them? And there's also a lack of knowledge about where to access contraceptives. So we're great at talking about, I suppose, condoms and use condoms, but actually signposting people, where can I actually get them? Who can I ask? Where are they? So it's really important that we know the answers to these questions. So we're going to look at the different types of contraceptives, and then I'm going to talk to you about some of the places that you can access them. So firstly, barrier forms of contraceptives. So there's two different types. So there's barrier forms and there's hormonal forms. And barrier forms prevent against pregnancy and STIs. And they do this because, like a condom, for example, they create a barrier between the two people's bodies, between sharing of fluids. So if somebody ejaculates into a condom, they're not sharing that fluid with their partner. So there's no sharing of that. So there's no risk of sharing an STI or spreading it or passing it on. They also prevent against pregnancy because, again, if you're not ejaculating, then that fluid isn't accessing somebody's body, so you can't get them pregnant. Condoms are 98% effective when used correctly. We will look in a minute how to use them correctly. I'll play you a little video. And 82% when not used correctly. And we'll look at some of the reasons that that happens as well. So there is a right way and a wrong way to use a condom. And there's some things that can affect how effective it is, like how you store it, how you open it, what you're looking for on the packet. Again, like I said, it's a thin sheet. It's rolled onto an erect penis. So the penis has to be erect before you put it on, and it prevents sperm from being passed to your partner. It can be used for vaginal or anal sex or oral sex. But when it comes to oral sex, it's really important that people know that you can use flavored condoms for this, because obviously they're going to taste better rather than kind of a latex or something that, you know, is just more like a rubber taste to it. They come in all different flavors. So there is an issue, I suppose, when it comes to flavored condoms. People often then decide to use them for regular sex, and they are absolutely not designed for this. So flavored condoms have a flavor on them for a reason, because they're designed to go into your mouth and nowhere else. You do not need a flavored condom to go into somebody's body. They're made from a thinner latex because they're designed that you have a better feel through them if you're engaging in oral sex. And therefore, if you use them for regular sex, they're much more likely to rip or tear. People often don't take the time, but if you do read the box, it's written on it. So regular condoms for regular sex, and oral sex is flavored condoms. It's all in the flavor, it gives it away, but just keep it in mind. And it's really important that people remember not to use flavored condoms for regular sex. There is something then called a female condom that people often haven't seen, or they don't know what it is, but I like to put it in just so that you know, if you ever do come across it, what it looks like and what to expect. So you can access these. They're about 15 to 17 euros to buy one. And again, like a condom, they're disposed of after one use. They're not reusable. So they are quite expensive, but some people might come across them or choose to use them. So if you do, it's just that you're aware of them. 95% effective when used correctly. And it's placed inside the vagina. So up at the top here, there's usually a ring or a sponge that somebody can pinch, and then they push it up inside themselves and it opens out. And the outside bit here sits outside the vagina, so that when the penis enters, it's held and it's not going to move. Again, thrown away after sex. So it is there. If you ever come across it, that's what it is. So don't be worried. Dental dam then is the final of the barrier methods. And what it is it's a thin sheet of latex. They're usually flavored. So they come in blueberry, strawberry, all of the things like a flavored condom. And what they are is they're a sheet used to cover the vagina or the anal area when you're stimulating your partner. So basically, if you're engaging in oral sex, like we've talked about, you can get an STI in your mouth or in your throat. Whereas if you place a dental dam over the part of somebody's body that you're stimulating, you're preventing that sharing of fluid, so you cannot contract anything. And they have a taste to them as well, so that it tastes better. So it's really good that people know that these exist. If you can't buy a dental dams, they are available in places like Boots, but if you can't buy one, you can buy flavored condoms and actually just cut them up the side and cut the tip off them and roll them out and make your own dental dam. So if you don't have them, you can make one out of a flavored condom, so don't worry about that. So we're just going to have a quick look at a condom demo video. So this will show us the correct way to put on a condom and also what you need to look for on the packet and how to store it. I'm just going to play this.
Always check the date on the condom pack and never use any condom that is past its expiry date. Make sure that the condom you're using has the CE mark. Keep your condoms away from heat, light and damp, as these can damage them. Carry them in a safe place. Open the packet carefully by pulling down on the serrated edge. Watch out for nails, jewellery, etc., as these can easily damage condoms. The penis should be fully erect before putting on a condom. With one hand, squeeze the tip of the condom between thumb and finger to get rid of all of the air at the tip. Put the condom on the penis with the other hand and roll it all the way down. Be sure to put it on with the roll on the outside. Only water-based lubricants should be used with condoms. Never use anything oil-based with condoms, such as Vaseline or baby oil. These will rot the condom and may result in it ripping or tearing more easily. The penis should be withdrawn immediately after ejaculation. The condom should be held firmly at the base of the penis while withdrawing to stop the condom from coming off or leaking. Knot the base of the condom, check for any tears, wrap it in a tissue and throw it in a bin. Do not throw it in the toilet, as condoms won't flush. Only use one condom at a time and do not reuse. If used correctly, condoms will protect against STIs and pregnancy. Always check the...
So that's just the important things that we need to remember about condoms. So look for your date on the condom to make sure that it's out of date. Make sure that it has a CE mark to show that it's made correctly with European standards. Make sure that you open it using the serrated edges. So often people go for the straight side of the condom and it obviously isn't going to open easily and they bite it and you can damage the condom that way. And make sure that you throw it away safely in a bin. It's very unlikely that somebody's going to go through the bin to see what's there, but it's much more likely if you attempt to flush it down a toilet that it will pop up again. So just keep those in mind. If anybody is looking to access condoms or lube, you can do so through us at the Sexual Health Centre. So don't be afraid to get in touch, and at the Sexual Health Hub stand. So I'll talk about that a bit more at the end as well. But never be embarrassed to ask for them. That's what they're there for. And those videos are available on our YouTube channel. So if you ever want to recap, you're just not sure how to use them correctly, you can have a look at that at Sexual Health Centre on YouTube and you'll see it, the condom demo video. So the last types of contraception then, so we have barrier forms which prevent against STIs and pregnancy. And then we have hormonal forms which only prevent against pregnancy. So these are generally targeted at females. So they interrupt that kind of releasing an egg and the hormonal cycle inside the body. So we'll just look at some of them and what they do and how eventually then you can access them. So one of the most common ones that people usually know about is the pill. So people will often see this or hear of it or know somebody who's on it. And what the pill does is It stops a woman ovulating. So you take a pill, one a day, every day for about a month. Usually there's 28 in the packet, so the rough average cycle. So you take a pill every day and it builds up the hormones in your body that basically stop a woman releasing an egg. So if you don't release an egg, there's nothing there to be fertilized, so somebody can't get pregnant. People can take one pill packet into the next pill packet. They don't need to actually take a break anymore. So they used to say you should take a break of a week and have a fake period where a woman will bleed, but there isn't actually any shedding of an egg. But that advice now has changed. So somebody can choose to continue on with their pill and just never have a period while they're on it because they're not actually releasing an egg. So there isn't anything to shed. They're really good for people who are great at remembering to take them. So the pill is a great option if you're somebody who's really organized. You're going to remember to take it at 9 o'clock every morning for however long that you're going to be on it. But it's not always the best option for everybody. And because it's so well known, people assume often, I think, that they should have the pill and it should be the one for them. So we'll talk through some of the other ones that are similar, but remember the pill, great if you're great at remembering to take something every day, but that's not for everybody. Some people aren't going to remember to do that, and then it's not the best option for you, and that's all right. It's also important to note that if you're ever sick, so if you ever get a vomiting bug or anything like that, you have to use condoms for 7 days, because when you're vomiting or throwing up, you can have a chance of vomiting up some of the pill before it's actually digested into your bloodstream. So that's really important. If you're ever out or you ever get sick, you can actually get pregnant because the pill won't have fully been absorbed because you've thrown it up. So you need to use condoms for 7 days. And if you're ever put on an antibiotic while you're on the pill, so you might get a cold or a flu or something and they put you on an antibiotic, it counteracts it. So it means it doesn't work. So again, if you're on antibiotics, you need to use condoms for at least 7 days after you've finished those. So just keep that in mind. The patch then is the other one that's very similar to the pill, but it's great if you're somebody who's less good at remembering to take a pill every day. So the patch is the exact same idea. The hormones are inside the patch itself. You put it on your body like a plaster. So there's usually somewhere up around the top part of your body. So people often put it on their thighs, inner thighs. They might put it on their side or the outside of their arm, and it releases the hormone in through the skin. So it's actually just being absorbed directly. You put it on once a week. So if, for example, somebody puts it on a Sunday night, they leave it, they wear it all week, and next Sunday night they take it off and they put on their next one for the next week. So much easier to remember than having to take a pill every day. And they're really super sticky. So we always get questions like, will it not come off in the shower? Will it not, if I'm rubbing against it or, like a plaster, will it not pop off? No, they're super, super sticky. So chances are at the end of the week, you're going to have to rip it kind of off a little bit. So it's a great solution for people who aren't going to remember to take something every day, but still want that idea of being protected and not having to worry about it as much. So most people, when they start taking some form of hormonal contraception, will usually start on one or the two of those. The reason being that you can take the pill, and depending how it sits with your body, so different people will have different reaction to hormonal contraception. And the reason is that you're introducing a hormone to your body, and some people it will agree with, and other people might find that they get more breakouts, or they might start to put on some weight, or they might have mood swings or headaches. So it's really important not to feel that just because a friend is maybe having the pill or the patch and it's suiting them, that it should suit you. So if you have any of the side effects or symptoms, don't be afraid to go back to your GP or to one of the services you got the contraception from and say that you don't feel it's suiting you, and you can always try something else. The next one kind of up from these, I suppose, then is the implant or the bar. And what that is it's small little matchstick sized piece of plastic, and all of the hormones are inside that. It's placed into the upper part of the arm here, like we can see in the image, and it releases the hormones into the body slowly every day for 5 years, 3 to 5 years on average. Most people kind of have them for 5 years. It's a great way to have contraception that you never need to think about or worry about. It's just there, it's working for 5 years. So usually people, when they get into relationships, a lot of the time will decide to get the bar because it means they don't have to think about getting their pill or, putting the patch on every week. They know that they're covered for a longer term with those. It's not something that people would usually be recommended to start with because it's placed inside your body. So if anybody has any reactions to it or they don't like how it's sitting with their body, they have to get it removed surgically. So they just have to make a little cut to take it out. It's not a big deal, but it's just nice often that they will start on kind of, easier contraceptives and work up to that so that you know how it sits and works with your body. The other one then, and there are more than these, we're just going to talk about these ones today because they're the most common ones that people ask about, is the IUD or the coil. So what this is a small T-shaped plastic kind of bar. It's tiny if you see it. So this is on the right, is it inside of a woman, and this is it just if you were to see it out on the counter. It's made with either plastic, and some have copper wires wrapped around them. And what it does is it works in one or all of three ways. It stops the sperm from reaching and combining with the egg. So when the sperm actually swims up here, it gets stopped by the device and it can't actually get up into the fallopian tube to meet the egg. It prevents or delays the egg getting to the womb. So again, if an egg was released, it prevents or delays it getting down. And it prevents the egg from settling in the womb. So if an egg did get fertilized, it can't really settle because the device is here. And the ones that have the copper wrapped around them are toxic to both sperm and the egg. So they'll actually kill it. So it's something that's toxic there for them. They're 99% effective. These are usually used as a long-term contraceptive. So they can be inside somebody for up to 10 years. They are becoming more common at the minute. So a lot of people are getting them fitted. So if you do come across them or somebody has them, that's what they're for. So they're just 10-year contraceptive and they sit inside you. They can be taken out if somebody does choose, so it's not permanent either. If somebody changes their mind and they want it removed, they can get it removed at any stage. Somebody's asked in the chat box, is it not painful? It's not painful at all. So they're actually really tiny. And these two top pieces here actually bend back almost flat against the sides here as they're inserting it. So they'll be put in by a doctor or somebody trained to insert contraception. And so basically it's just a small flat rod that's inserted and then it opens out once it's inside. It's actually tiny, so you wouldn't even feel it, and it just sits up there. People shouldn't ever feel them when they're inside of them. So if you are experiencing, you know anybody who's gotten one and they're in pain with it inside them, it could be that it's shifted or moved a little bit and they can just go back and get it checked. But you shouldn't feel it, it's not painful, and it should never hurt. So that is the IUD if you ever hear anybody talking about them. The services then, just to touch on with you guys, that exist for contraception are ourselves at the Sexual Health Centre in terms of we do any support pieces, any questions, anything that you ever want to ask, you're worried about, or you just need some more information on something, you can email us, you can call us. We're here to answer any of those and signpost you. We do give out free condoms and lube. We have a free condom postal service and lube for people 17 or over. So there is a function on our website where people can actually fill it in. You will have to confirm who you are over the phone and give your details. So you can't order them for somebody else as a joke or anything like that. It is a serious process and it's something that we do to make it easier for people who aren't based in cities to access condoms and lube. We also do free pregnancy testing. So if anybody's ever worried that they might be pregnant or they're not sure, you can come in and we have a 3-option pregnancy counselling. So if somebody found out they were pregnant, we will talk them through all of their options completely unbiasedly and support them around that. And all of those are free. I spoke about it with you at the beginning. So obviously we have the Sexual Health Hub page on Instagram, which is a support piece, but we also have the Sexual Health Hub stands. And what they are is stands based in organisations, youth centres, family resource centres, all around Cork City and County. And if you ever see a Sexual Health Hub stand, it will have all of the information around everything we've covered in these workshops: relationships, sexuality, gender, contraception, STIs. There is also the ability to access free condoms and lube. So if you know of a centre near you that has a Sexual Health Hub stand, you can go in and access free condoms and lube there. And I also come and do free workshops with people who are in those. I can see a couple of questions in the chat box. Somebody has said, is abortion illegal in Ireland? No, so we have brought in abortion into Ireland. So up to 12 weeks, somebody can access a termination in Ireland. So if that's something that they're interested in, if they find out that they're pregnant, they can now access that. And the final service, just to signpost to you as well then, is the Youth Health Service. So the Youth Health Service is a free, non-judgmental sexual health counselling service. So they have a free STI clinic. They have a contraceptive clinic where you can access the likes of the pill, the patch, the bar, the IUD, and they also do crisis pregnancy counselling. If you're looking to access the contraceptive clinic, you can just either email them or call them and they will get back to you. And most of the services are free, depending on the funding that they have at the time. There might be a small charge, so you might have to pay to actually pick up the IUD, but they will fit it for you for free. So it's much cheaper, and that service is for anybody aged 23 or under. So they're a brilliant service to access actual contraceptives free. So just keep that in mind. If you have any questions about any of the contraceptives or any of the services, where you can access it, especially if maybe you're more remote or rural, or how you can get in touch with these services and you're not sure when you'll be into the city to get them, you can just give us a buzz in the Sexual Health Centre as well, and we'll help and try to arrange any of that and support people around it. I have another question here in the chat box, so I'm just going to say thank you everybody so much. This was our final session for today, and next week we'll be looking at STIs and supports around that and what happens if you go to get an STI screening. But I will go through some of the questions just in the chat box now as well. So how can somebody contact the LGBTI support person? So Conrad is our LGBTI support worker. So somebody can contact Conrad at Conrad Im Sexual Health Centre, or if it's easier while it's up here, if you want to email info@Sexual Health Centre and say you're looking for Conrad, or you can phone the Sexual Health Centre, we would be very happy to link people up with him. As I said, he's there for support, for talks, you know, any kind of thing at all. If anybody is struggling with their sexuality or their gender, or feels they know somebody who is and would like to support them, that's what Conrad is there for. So any of those questions, he's very, very happy to help with, answer, signpost, support, and again, completely free. So there's no charge for that service. You can reach out to Conrad at any stage. There is another question: is parental supervision needed to use the centre's services? So no. So when people come into us, it's usually that they come in themselves. If somebody is 16 or older in Ireland, they have the right to access, I suppose they call it medical responsibility. So in terms of any of the services that we provide, like condoms or, you know, pregnancy testing, they can access that above 16. If somebody came in to access a pregnancy test and they were 15 or younger, we would be asking to contact a support person for them. The reason being that they are below the age of consent and they would need support around actually dealing with whatever is going on for them, and to make sure that the sex was consensual and that they were comfortable with that and that there was nothing untoward around that. So if somebody is under the age of 16, we will look to link them in with somebody to support them outside of the centre. But we would be talking to them about all of that on the day and supporting them and making those phone calls or reaching out to people to support them with it. So never feel that you can't come in. And if you do come in, we will do everything we possibly can to support somebody and make sure that it's easy for them. I have another question here. Somebody says, would you recommend hormonal contraceptives for somebody who's not at risk of pregnancy but has bad periods? Absolutely. So I should have said that actually. Sorry, my mistake. If somebody, for example, is put on the pill, it can often be not because they're looking to be sexually active. It can be that it actually has been shown to reduce kind of menstrual cramps, heavy periods, heavy bleeding. So people are often put on hormonal contraceptives when they have really hard periods. So they might get a lot of pain, they might get a lot of discomfort. And by taking a hormonal contraceptive, it actually often reduces that, so they don't suffer as much. So you might see somebody or know a friend and you see that they're taking the pill or they have the patch. It mightn't be for a contraceptive purpose at all. It could actually be just to help with their periods. So never assume that somebody's on it for those reasons. But if they are, they can access those. If somebody does have really heavy bleeding or really painful periods, hormonal contraception can actually be a really great way to help with any of that. I think that is it. But if anybody has any other questions, feel free to pop them in, or you can message us or email us or Twitter us or SHC Hub on Instagram us. And I hope you all enjoyed today's session, and I look forward to seeing you all next week for the final session in our series, where we will look at STIs, STI prevention, HIV, and supports around what happens when you go for an STI screening and what you need to know. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you then.